There we go. Okay. Good morning, everyone, to the Contemporary Issues class on a snowy March 14, Sunday. Nice to have you here. We're all warm in our houses, I hope. And we're going to talk today about the 1-year anniversary of the COVID pandemic and anything else in the news. We'll just have a day to chat today. No presentation, no book review, but we'll have a nice time to connect here. And want to welcome any first-time visitors, including Diane it says iPhone on her screen here. And she's a next door neighbor of Ron and Alice Puning. We're always glad to welcome new folks and hope you'll come tune in again with us as we discuss all kinds of topics. Before we get started, our usual announcements. Please mute yourself in the lower left corner of your screen. Click on the mute icon of the microphone so there's no background noise. We are recording this for future posterity. In case anybody says something profound, we will just save it for the future and replay it. And finally, be kind to each other in your comments, please. Sometimes we have folks like to challenge each other, and we don't really like that so much. So please be kind as Christians should. So with that, what's in the news besides the COVID that we're going to talk about that you think is interesting? And has anybody been traveling or getting ready to travel? Any personal things? Linda Harmon, are you getting ready to travel? Do I remember that? You're muted, Linda. Lower left corner. Unmute yourself. Linda, you're still muted. If you can unmute. Still muted. If you
Unmute.
can't, there you are. Okay. I hear
Okay.
you. Yeah.
Well, I just started walking carefully on
Good.
both feet.
Oh, because you broke your ankles about a month ago or so.
Well, it's 2 months now.
2 months ago.
Yeah, it was January 15. So it's been a long haul.
Yeah. Well, good for you. You're doing so much better.
Yeah, I am.
Super.
So anyhow, planning a trip to New York area to spend a week at the Chautauqua there. And that'll be in July. And then the trip to Germany has been postponed to 2022. So, but I'm beginning to look through the catalogs, so we shall see where I end up next.
Anybody else planning trips already? Eager to get out and fly and travel? My wife wants to go to Hawaii. She's never been to Hawaii, so she's really telling me we got to look at, there's probably good deals to be had in traveling. So we're looking at that for fall or next spring.
Yeah, you need to do that, Steve. It's really fun.
She needs to go to Hawaii.
Yeah.
Everybody should once.
Linda, my trip was postponed another year or two for African safari. So it's not going to be 21. It was going to be 20. Then it was going to be 21. Now it's going to be 22.
Right. Right. I'm doing the Passion Play. And of course, they only do it every 10 years. So when it closed down on 2020, I thought, 10 years, I may not still be alive. So I was really happy when they didn't even look at 21. They went directly to 22. And that was probably a smart move on their part.
Well, we should travel when we can. That's for sure.
Yep.
Never know. Well, let me do sort of an introduction on the COVID topic here. We are now at 1-year anniversary of the start of this whole thing. It was a year ago this week that things started shutting down, including our church, St. Andrew. and we were all taken by surprise by the effect of this virus. And since then, we have lost 500,000 people or more. And as I remember last March, we were all kind of in the mode of thinking this won't last too long probably, but we will figure it out, and in a few weeks or months, we'll be back to normal. But we have learned how pandemics work. And just wanted to talk about that today. How are you all reflecting on this? And have you got your shots, and any recommendations you can give to the rest of us on how to cope with this and move forward? So let's just have a discussion about that. I got my second shot, the Moderna, about 3 days ago, and 12 hours later, I was chilling and aching and headache, and that lasted for about 8 hours, and then I was fine.
Mhm.
And I
That's
understand that
exactly what I had.
you too, Lois.
It went just that same way.
Was
And
it
for-
Moderna?
I just thought, okay, this is showing me how I would feel if I really got the disease, because I was sick. Chills, temperature, ache. Oh,
Mhm.
anyway, it's
It didn't
gone.
last for 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I have a question, Steve. What are you folks saying to maybe family members or close friends that are saying that they will not get the vaccine?
Mhm.
Good question.
Why don't they want to do it?
A variety of reasons. They think they're young and healthy.
Well, there have been reports of concern in young women that vaccine may affect their pregnancy ability in the future.
Yeah.
There's still question about whether or not that's accurate, but some studies in the news are saying that that is a legitimate concern.
Mhm. Yeah, they have daughters that are in college now, and they don't want them to get them. And
I think medical reasons are a valid excuse for not getting it, but political reasons, I think, are foolhardy.
Mhm.
Good question.
One comment about what you said about a year ago, that our attitude was generally that it probably won't last long. I think that was probably based on our experience with Ebola. They seem to nip that in the bud in Africa by actions that were taken. And the current virus is so highly contagious, it just spreads so rapidly.
Jim, can you elaborate a little bit more what you mean by political reasons for not getting the vaccine?
Well, that it's somehow imposition on your freedom, of choice.
Oh, mhm.
I think it's a lack of concern for our fellow citizens. You're not just protecting yourself, you're protecting others by getting the vaccine. So we'll achieve herd immunity. If not enough people get it, we won't have herd immunity.
Thanks.
Well, and that's been the big story the last 2 weeks also, hasn't it? Texas, Mississippi, and other states say they are opening up regardless of how many COVID deaths there still are. And it's being seen as a political move by Republicans, Republican states, saying that we don't have to submit to the collective compassion and the president's request for everybody to stay restricted. What do you think about that? Do you think Texas and Mississippi have the right to do that?
Well, here's what I think the problem is. When you look at the Dakotas, for example, and some of these states like Nebraska, it all started with Medicaid. Medicaid was a shared expense where the government paid 80% and the states paid 20%. for a long time, for example, Nebraska wouldn't be part of the Medicaid program until they took it to the voters, and the voters voted that the state was to participate in Medicaid. When it comes down where the states have to come up with 20% of costs on something, the first thing they do is they're not for any of those type of programs. It's all about states and their budgets. It's all about what the cost, who's going to share the burden of the cost. The
It's a good
Dakotas
point.
are that
That's-
example. Nebraska did vote in Medicaid. For example, in Wyoming, they do not have Medicaid. The average cost of Medicare for somebody living in Nebraska, Colorado, the average cost for Medicare is about $120, $140 per person. In Wyoming, the average cost for anybody on Medicare is over $800 a month.
It's another reason why America is so hard to govern, is because it's got 50 independent states that all want to do their own thing and have many times the right to govern themselves. So it's like 50 different countries under one umbrella.
Does anyone know what the cost of a COVID vaccine shot is? You know, the government's paying for it. I just wondered what a shot for the Pfizer or Moderna, you know, what does the shot cost?
I think I heard it was $18 per shot.
Thank you.
Just for the medication, not for the people.
I want to read you just a couple of sentences from a Wall Street Journal article I was reading yesterday about the problems of opening up, restrictions. It talks about how businesses are having to decide whether they want to require masks or not, and the problems that that causes. It says, as COVID-19 restrictions loosen in several states, companies are having to make a painful decision. We have months of inconsistency ahead of us that could put major companies in a political hot seat, as well as trying to survive in the pandemic. In states like Texas, where leaders are calling for 100% normalcy, companies have to decide whether they want to allow the freedom of customers to go without masks, or if they want to please people who want to continue wearing masks. One business owner of a small boutique said, I can't say no to potential business, so I can't keep people out who don't want to wear a mask. She and her 20 employees of her boutique all wear a mask, but feel like they can't require people the customers to do the same. So it says many nationwide companies such as Target and Starbucks are maintaining their rules requiring masks, but smaller companies don't always feel they have the ability to turn people away. So they're afraid to require masks.
So even within states, they are having disputes, as is Austin, Texas, correct? I don't know what the Attorney General has filed lately, but the mayor of Austin is asking their Democratic majority in that city to wear masks.
How many businesses in this country have you not seen the sign that says, no shirt, no shoes, no service?
That's the headline of this story. It says, no shoes, no mask, no service. It's up to them. They have the right. Businesses have the right to decide that for people coming into their private business, but they're afraid to do it.
And what's going to happen at church if somebody comes in to worship on Sunday morning without a mask?
Good point, Chuck.
Well, conversely, Steve, when you see a sign like that, it makes for a greater readiness for numbers of us to go into that establishment. because the protections are in place. So I think it can sometimes work both ways, don't you think?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
Definitely.
What we could do is have a special section for those that want to wear their mask. And
Mhm.
those that don't can have whatever they want, but those with masks, we can have our own special area.
Mhm.
That's interesting. Well, we'll see how this all plays out. At St. Andrew, you know, we have a COVID task force that's deciding these things. And the decision so far is that church services will not be held until at least summer or fall, but small groups will be allowed in the building sometime the next few weeks or months.
Mhm.
So maybe with mask, we'll have to see exactly what's required. So we don't know yet. What do you all think about that issue of churches opening? Have any of you been to churches like Catholic churches that are open?
Yes, I belong to St. Thomas More, and they have been open since May of last year. But we have to sign up for a mass, but they provided 14 masses. Of course, they have the 4 priests there to start with. So there was a mass, they have 7 times for mass, but then they had the option for mass in a hall. And so as a result, many people were able to go to mass, but they had to sign up. Then it wasn't long, probably in June, when the daily mass, you didn't have to sign up for that. So because they found, but it's a very big church, but not any bigger, I don't think, than yours. But people, they had yellow buttons where you could sit. So we were always 6 feet apart, must have a mask. When we went up to communion, because we do, rather than communing, I don't know for sure how you do it there, but we would file up for communion. And so there again, they have ushers, so we stay 6 feet apart and keep the mask on and only take it off just to receive communion and then put it right back on again. And it has worked very well. I don't know of any COVID that has happened in the church. But of course, the small group, even there's a few small group meetings now going on, but always must wear the mask, which has never been a problem for me. I was talking to my sister, she just chopping at the bit for things to get normal again. But I said, you know, I feel safe with the rules that we have in Colorado, and I don't mind following the rules. Even though I have traveled, I traveled last September to the state of Washington to visit my sister there who had shingles, and I was there to support her. And then my brother, and then last May, I flew to Milwaukee, and because my brother had a stroke and older brother, and so I was there to help him, but felt very safe in the travel as well as going to church. But I agree with you. I think it's very confusing for these states that have opened up and then, but we don't have enough herd immunity. I think it's very confusing for those states.
Thank you, Diane. That's good to know about how Catholic churches.
Currently, the bishop won't let us open until we're under 4%. On Monday, Arapahoe County is going to blue. We will be under 4% in Arapahoe County, and all businesses in Arapahoe County can now open at 50% starting on Monday.
Cherry Hills Community Church.
Which one, Shirley?
Cherry Hills Community.
Cherry
Church
Hills has been,
having you sign up, and they have, I think it's over 100 at a time, and they do
Okay.
scatter. Families can sit together, couples can sit together, and they even sing. They have the masks, and it's worked out really well for them.
good. That's the non-denominational church just a block away from our
Yes.
St. Andrew Church.
Another
Yes.
one that's open in the neighborhood is Southeast Community Church over on, I believe, Peoria in Parker. They've been open the whole time.
Right.
Oh.
My daughter and family go there and they say it's working just fine. They're
they're
just
spread-
amazed that we're not open at all.
Lois, they're spread out, aren't they? And they have to get a
Yeah.
reservation. Yeah.
You do, yeah, they do that. But it's not a problem. It doesn't seem to be. And my daughter and her husband and my grandchildren, no problem, any of them. They think it's no problem.
Well, I'm
You,
gonna vote for, I'm glad that St. Andrew has been closed and continues to stay that way. You know, if people want to go to a in-service church, they could go to another church then, you know, but I really am glad that St. Andrew has done what they have done. And also a comment about Austin, our daughter and son-in-law lived there for quite a while and they decided to move to Missoula, Montana over Christmas. And they noticed an increase in mask wearing in Missoula compared to Austin. You know, I was surprised to hear that because you think of Austin as being very progressive and, you know, different from the rest of Texas. But they were surprised that so many more people wore masks in Missoula. Interesting, I thought.
I wouldn't feel safe flying on an airplane unless the airline required that people have had their shots, COVID shots.
Well, my daughter, another one of my daughters and her husband and so forth, they fly regularly and they say that the airplanes are so good at, I don't know how they do it. They exchange the air every so often. None of them have gotten COVID from that either. Mhm.
But that's
thing
a
that
whole
I haven't
nother-
heard, one thing that I haven't heard mentioned about churches and any churches, but not our church included. I'm not a real big sacramental kind of guy. I don't put that real high on my list of priorities or anything like that, but I know a lot of people do. And I am really surprised that St. Andrew and other churches have not figured out some way to do to address this issue, to have maybe communion where people go take communion and leave so that other people can replace them. I mean, we've always had communion once a month at St. Andrew. We don't have any, we haven't seen a baptism in over a year. I don't know if any weddings have taken place. I know that funerals are a thing of the past and that there are an awful lot of people that are waiting to be prayed over to get into the next world. And, you know, I just think, I just think that that the church is, that's one of the things that the church does that is quite important. And that is to recognize and celebrate important milestones in people's lives. And that has been totally lost.
Yeah.
St. Andrew has had baptisms and we had funerals. They're just virtue. And you, if you know about them, you can go online and participate in them.
Yeah, we're just not talking about them.
It is
Not
taking place.
publicized. Yeah.
Right. Maybe we got to do a better job of telling everybody about certain memorial services and baptism, but they have been taking place.
Bill and I have traveled actually several times during COVID and for a family wedding. And we actually had it was in a backyard and we all wore masks, and that was in September. My son was married and they had to cancel the wedding once. And then my son was able to come out here for Christmas and travel. And luckily all of our family, most of them have O positive blood. And I know that's there's been some studies that have been done throughout. Harvard Medical had put out some articles, and if you research it, you can find even before this COVID virus came out, there were studies done on blood types that stated how certain blood types are more vulnerable than others to susceptibility of disease and passing disease. So I found that very interesting. And so none of the people in my family have gotten COVID, but my father, except my father, but he had no symptoms.
Wow.
And he had such a high titer rate that they wanted to, take his blood. And, but his doctor said no, because he had some health conditions and he couldn't donate. But he was the only person in our family, and he does have O positive. And he lived with his wife who was A negative, and she never got it. And, so that was really interesting to me, and he's on a CPAP machine, at night, and, he's had a couple of strokes and everything. And
Wow.
amazingly, his immunities are way down in a lot of ways because of his health, but he did not get it. So I feel that the church, it's been very hard for me personally. I am a sacramental kind of a person. I like communion. I was raised Catholic. So was my husband, Bill. And I like the sense of community. I had a very difficult time over Christmas because I couldn't serve.
Yeah.
I really did. I actually called and talked with Sarah Davis about it. I says, what can I do? Can't I go somewhere? And, I don't want to just write a check, and I don't want to write a check to Amazon. I'm sorry. I don't believe in that. So I wanted to serve, and I wanted to do something for others, and they didn't have any options. And, it's been frustrating for me, really has. I feel like I've lost a lot of sense of community with the church. I've watched a few times with this, but I think it's become a very political statement the church is making. And it's been hard for me to see that, really has. I think the church has become extremely politically involved, and it's been, I don't think it's a good thing to do. I believe in separation of church and state. Maybe that's because I was raised Catholic and that's how they, my family was. But it's been difficult.
Do you mean you feel like the St. Andrew's reaction to the pandemic has been political?
Yes, very much.
Yeah, I think so too.
How so? Exactly what do you mean?
Well, I mean that, there's just a lot of issues that are, with the Black Lives Matter, the Republicans, the Democrats, the, let's get rid of Republicans. And I'm an independent, but, I have voted Republican and I have voted Democrat. And I just think that there's a lot of serious issues of division still out there, and that will continue.
You think the sermons have been too political?
No, not the sermons, but a lot of the discussions, I think Mark extremely, I don't know the word. He's very careful not to do that. And I highly respect that about Mark. I think he creates a sense of acceptance, and he doesn't, unless you really, really know him personally, you might not even know what political affiliation he is. And, but anyway, I think he is very good at looking at both sides and accepting all people. But I think the church itself, in the decisions they make, it seems that they've chosen their political side.
It's Norley. I just wanted to ask, I did not see the session that you had with Lana Banbury, and I was thinking that the policies that the church has adopted are based on regulatory requirements from the state and other areas. I'm trying to understand how we responded and the facts that we used, and I don't know if that's necessarily political or not. Do you have any feedback on that? Did Lana describe that?
I will say this much, the church does support the Denver Rescue Mission, and we have groups of people that go down there and serve that. There's a lot of community things that we are supporting, and we have people that go and do support those things. So we are reaching out in our community. So when you say that St. Andrew is not participating, I don't think you've looked at the whole picture of what's going on.
Well,
we are supporting that Denver Rescue
I'm saying
Mission.
that they just wanted me to write a check. They didn't want me to a body. They said, "Oh, we have enough people. We already have this group set up." I wasn't invited, and I've offered.
Well,
several
that's hard to
times.
believe, because there are people going down there filling the baskets for East Elementary and a couple others. And as far as I know, that's open for anybody that wants to go and participate that.
I'm referencing at Christmas time, I was looking to do like the angel tree or the families. I had supported a single parent family before and wanted to do something like that and go shopping and do something special with the single parent family or in need. And I wasn't able to do that. That's what I'm saying. And it was difficult for me. And I work 60 hours a week, so I can't just go down anytime, but I did have some time during the holidays. I could have done something and I do donate to the church regularly, but I wanted to do something of service and and I was trying to reach out to the woman who said, and I believe it was someone else, I don't know your name, but that said about the sacramental ways of participating as a community. And I think that having in-person, we all go to Home Depot, we go to the grocery store, we go to all the, go out to eat. Why can't we go to church? And like the Catholics have done a fantastic job. I've even considering leaving the church and going back to the Catholic Church because I'm very frustrated, just to let you know. And I think a lot of people are, especially families. Oh my gosh, they're struggling so much with children. I can't imagine raising children during this. It's very difficult for them.
Well, Deb, thank you for sharing that. That's what we are here to do, try and share. I don't know all the details about what you volunteered for, but it's good we can talk these things out, for sure.
Steve,
Okay.
I'd like to go back to what the question that Judy Hall asked earlier about what you can say to someone and anybody who has had success dealing with someone who says, I'm not going to get that shot. I have a couple of friends who are dead set against the vaccination and not for medical reasons. Has anybody had a successful interchange with someone who does not want to get vaccinated?
I won't.
Diane, you are muted. I see you are trying to talk, but you need to unmute in your lower left corner, please. You can. I cannot unmute you, Diane. The lower left corner of your screen, click on the mute button. Okay, sorry.
I want to point out a
Anybody
couple
else?
other areas in society where we have to make medical versus personal freedom decisions. In some states, to get a marriage license, you have to take a blood test to check for syphilis and other diseases. If you're born in a hospital, they put every baby through some test. I knew one lady, it was a nurse. Her job was to give hearing tests to all these newborns before they left the hospital. They also like to do a blood test on babies to see if they have certain genetic factors that make them vulnerable to proteins and a couple diseases where if they're fed a regular diet, they will literally be killed if their diet isn't controlled. And for those that are in the nursing profession, I'd like you to comment on any other tests that are typically done. And maybe even when you get a little older, you take your baby in for the first check, virtually every doctor will tell you, we want to give this child the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, a couple other ones. And to get into a lot of school systems, your first day of school, in some school systems, you're often asked to have proof of vaccinations against certain things. So
Those elementary schools still require it?
I don't know. I think it varies from district to district and state to state. But here's examples of rules versus personal freedom. And I particularly lament when parents decline some of these things because they're literally choosing to put their baby and small child at extreme risk of a deadly disease. and the others around them without giving them a chance. So it's never been an easy thing in society, and to some degree, we're struggling with that with the pandemic vaccine.
My
Can you-
granddaughters go to Arapahoe High School. To get into any sports at Arapahoe High School, you must pass a sports physical.
Mhm. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Diane, sure can. Go ahead.
Okay, I found the button. I just wanted to say my oldest sister was not interested in the vaccine. She was very concerned about my younger sister and I about receiving the vaccine. But over time, she has seen, I think just because we said we were anxious and very happy to be able to receive the vaccine. And she's also realizing she's not going to be able to do things in her church. She's very involved in the church. And so she's looking forward now, not looking forward to receiving the vaccine, but I think she's seeing that this is going to be part of our lives. And so to speak to the lady that had asked about this, I think in time, our relatives are going to come around as they see that it's a way of life.
One vaccine I'd like to bring up, remember when we had the polio vaccine?
Yes.
Do you remember very many people refusing that? I don't, but maybe I was, I
Good
just
question.
remember lining up and we went and got it. It was scary. And what do the rest of you remember about that? Do you remember people refusing that like they are with this?
No, but now we don't have that worry at all.
Judy?
Yeah, Norley, go ahead.
Thank you. I knew a young woman, and I'm 66. I knew a young woman who actually was a victim of the polio vaccine. She lost use of her legs. She was probably about 10 years younger than I, but she actually got polio because of the vaccine.
Yeah, well, I have a friend that's probably in her mid 70s that she got polio before the vaccine was available. And she's gradually declined. I mean, she's had a good life. She's exercised and done a lot of things. She's been able to travel, but eventually she'll lose the use of her legs. But it wasn't because she got the vaccine. It was because she got the polio before the vaccine was available.
Judy, that's a good point too, but back then we didn't have the internet, which would spread all of the information, and the opposition and false stories as much as we do today creates much more opposition, I think.
Yeah. And there seemed to be trust. Now, I lived in a conservative area, and all the parents just had their kids there the first chance they had to get that vaccine.
Yeah.
I don't remember. And I asked my mother later in life when I was learning a little bit about this in college, and she said she knew of no one that refused it. So I don't know. They saw too many people in iron lungs. They saw too many people in bad conditions.
Yeah. Norley, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm also curious, I don't know if we have any people of color here, but my understanding is that there's a lot of skepticism in the Latino and Black communities about vaccinations, and especially government-sponsored kinds of things.
Tuskegee, yeah.
Yep. Well, they've been abused by the government in some cases in the past, and say they are justified in being skeptical about vaccines. I want to wrap up here on this. Actually, well, no, Ron, it's okay. Go ahead. I wanted to just take another couple minutes on this and then move on to another lighter topic. Go ahead.
As Yogi Berra used to say, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. Scientifically thinking, every path in life involves risk. And if we come to a path and one path is 100 times more risky or 1,000 times more risky than the other path, scientifically and morally, you're always better to take the low risk path, especially when they differ by a couple orders of magnitude. And I think if you study it scientifically, taking the vaccine the risk level is infinitely lower than taking the other pathway. So scientifically, it makes sense, and morally and personally looking out for yourself, you're better off to take the mathematically better pathway, which is to get the vaccine.
Thing about the Catholic Church, they have come out against the Johnson & Johnson vaccine because they did not like how they'd done some of their previous researches on other areas.
Really?
So it's been in the paper that some bishops in the country telling people do not use the Johnson & Johnson vaccine because they don't like the company.
That's right.
How they conducted previous researches.
It was what was in the vaccine, right?
It's not what's in the vaccine, it's what they have done in other researches.
Yeah.
They're just against Johnson & Johnson, period.
Right, and that's only some of the bishops. The Pope actually has asked us to receive whatever vaccine is available, because the most important thing is the community, that we are vaccinated so that we're not a danger to other people in the community. It's only very conservative bishops that are saying this, but for the most part, the Catholic Church is saying receive. The most important thing is to be vaccinated.
Steve, one real quick question. The meeting on the 25th of March, the plans for St. Andrews will be unveiled. How significant will that meeting be? Will we have answers to some of the questions that have come up?
I think probably so. The executive director, Lana Banbury, will be telling what the COVID task force is recommending, and we can ask questions too. So that'll be an online Zoom town hall meeting. Hope we'll all go to that. Well, this was a good discussion. I'll tell you what, in the last 15 minutes, I'd like to shift gears here a little bit just for fun and talk about the Royal Rumble, the Harry and Meghan, split with the royal family, because I normally have not been interested in the royal family issues at all. But this one kind of caught my attention because it was brought in issues of race and religion, and the we could say, cold-hearted response of the royal family. Whether that's fair or not, some people see it that way. So I Googled just for a moment the phrase royals and their religion to see what came up. And it says that the Queen holds the title of the Defender of the Faith and Supreme Governor of the Church of England. The royal family are all members of the Church of England. Prince Charles has said that when he becomes king, his title will be simply Defender of the Faith, and that he will not be known as the Supreme Governor of the Church of England because he wants to not exclude other religions that are practiced in Britain today. The Church of England, as we know, came about when the royal family, King George, split off because he couldn't marry the wife of his brother, and so created himself as the head of a new religion called the Church of England, and it's carried on ever since.
Wasn't that
Henry VIII?
Henry VIII, not King George. Yes, thank you, Henry VIII. So that's where it came. It also says that until recently, it was against the law for a royal to marry a Roman Catholic unless they wanted to lose their spot in line for the throne. But new rules were brought into existence in 2015, which disregarded the male bias and said a future leader could marry a Catholic. However, the monarch, him or herself, must still be raised under the Church of England. So this has also brought them criticism for excluding Catholics and not being in the 21st century. So what did you think about this whole thing? There has been a lot of talk this week after the Oprah interview about the royal family is racist and treated Harry and Meghan poorly. And on the other side are people saying they think that Meghan in particular has been a scheming young American who tried to meet the prince and marry into the royal family for her own gain. What do you think?
I want to say, first of all, I was really concerned with their stand on her mental health issues.
Mhm.
She asked for help and
Yes.
was turned down. And then I also want to point out there's a reason why the U.S. has a 4th of July Independence Day. We celebrate Great Britain for a reason.
That's good. Thank you, Alice. Judy Hall, you started to say something.
Oh, I forgot. I was laughing so much about that. First of all, I think our queen is definitely Oprah. That was a well-conducted interview. I thought. She's amazing. And if you get a chance to listen to any of her other interviews, they are really good. I think it's an issue about media in England. That's a huge part of it. They seem to have a lot of power and use it however they feel they want to. So that's another major issue. So that's all I was going to say.
I totally disagree or totally agree with Judy. I think this whole thing has to do with the electronic media that has been, it is so pervasive that everybody is involved with it, with social media, with Facebook, with Twitter, and with everything else that is going on, and that there is really no controls on this, that it can be abused so readily, and that we are struggling with how to handle this, maintaining the freedoms that we have, freedom of the press and freedom of speech, that we're all wondering where does one stop and the other begin. And I think this is a healthy discussion, a healthy area that we start addressing, because I think if we don't, that a lot more people are going to be hurt. And I think people are being hurt over and over and over again. So
it's a good point. And of course, a lot of people say that to what Alice said, that the royal staff should never have declined to get help for somebody who said that they were suicidal.
Yeah.
And that stepped over the line, and that needs to be reformed. And that's part of why these two young people were speaking out, that this is a closed culture that needs to come into the 21st century and not be trapped, in the words of that Prince Harry. Nora Lee, go ahead.
Steve, I just wanted to also say another factor that stands out for me is the competition for the eyeballs and the ears of the world. How much profit margin was considered when they even thought about having this conversation? I mean, it just seems a little bit, not suspect to me, but it's like, why do I even need to care? But that's just
so many factors come into play in this whole story. It's what makes it interesting. Yeah.
One thing that I thought of is, Oprah is not a professional journalist. She's a theatrical person, and I thought her reaction to some of the discussion was, wow, and it
was not objective.
Yeah, and it colored people's, reaction to the whole discussion. I think if it would have been helpful if she were a little more neutral. But then, she's a theatrical person, not a professional journalist.
She was not objective, neutral. That's right. Terry, go ahead.
I worked for a company here in Littleton. In 1975, we were bought up by the British. I made a dozen trips to the headquarters in England. they very much believe in a class system there. In the United States, we are able to move up within our organizations, but in the companies in Europe, in England, I mean, you cannot move up. You're stuck in a class system. And the British press really believes and supports the class system. It's all about your background, where your education, where you live, what your parents' education and their background, and it affects everything they do. I had to be very careful. I moved up through my organization, but I was told many times, do not tell anybody at your sister company how you were able to move up in our organization here in the United States, because it's not allowed in England.
I read something, and I want to read you a couple sentences real short on the internet about why the British are considered reserved and even cold-hearted. It says, engaging with strangers in conversation isn't the norm in England. If you're on a public transport, most people will read books or be looking at their phones. And if you try to start a conversation with them, they will give a couple of pleasant exchanges and they'll go back to wanting to be left alone. This is simply a British cultural upbringing custom. Another thing they like to do is they love to say please and thank you, and they like to even invite each other to lunch without the expectation that you will actually have lunch with them. It's common to make promises as one way of simply being polite. Both parties know you won't actually follow through on your promise to meet for a meal, but it's a nice way to just try to be pleasant. The British can also be quite formal and communicate in a stiff way, which for some cultures comes across as detached and unfriendly. But you simply have to get to know how the British behave. This is why cultural awareness is so important.
That reminds me of the South. Y'all come visit anytime. And, and it's not to be done. It's just a figure of speech.
Oh.
And some of that reserve is seen in New Englanders in Vermont and upstate Maine and so forth. Some same attributes as well. Reserve, sometimes coming across as cold, but they are true friends over time, for sure.
Otherwise, how could they be so funny? They're hysterical as far as entertainment goes. I just discovered the Great British Baking Show last night. They're funny.
Yes.
England, the subway says, mind the gap, but it applies to other things as well.
Right. But there is the religious connection to this too, because our faith, of course, says we are to be compassionate and helpful and warm to people. And do the British people not do that to their detriment? Should the royal family be paying more attention to being defenders of the faith and reform their staff that's not trying to help people when they claim they are suicidal, for example?
I like the Queen's reaction to it. She said it's a family matter and it would be handled privately. Didn't get jumped into the yeah.
Yep. Yep. But there has to be a balance. There has to be public accountability when the royal family is publicly supported also.
I think the royal family makes a big mistake by not helping people understand the culture and what it's going to be like if you marry into it. Like Diana, she was so naive. She had no clue as to what she was getting into. And I wonder about Meghan too. You know, they really need to inform them and really set, you know, have like Royalty 101 class or something, you know, to inform them ahead of time. Hey, this is what you're marrying into. You're not just marrying the people in the family. You're marrying into the culture, and this is what the culture is like. And Meghan, being from the United States, probably had not a clue. And that's really an important thing if, you don't buy into that way of life too.
I'd
Good
like
point,
Susan's
man.
comment about it, since she's a part of the Commonwealth.
Oh, Susan Sutton, since she's in
Yeah.
Canada. Uh-huh. Susan, are you still with us
Yes.
here online? What do you think? Yeah, Megan and Harry came to Canada, lived there for a while before they moved to Los Angeles.
Well,
How
when
do
I became a
Canadians?
dual, so when I became a dual citizen, I had to swear my allegiance to the Queen. So they take it very seriously
Oh,
here. And we do really identify as being a member of the Commonwealth. And I think a lot of the comments that people have made have resonated with me in terms of people being very polite, but also, kind of standoffish. And they always think, Americans are so outgoing. So even though people think we're so similar, we're very, very different. But I thought that having Megan treated this way was like a very short-sighted on the part of the royal family, because the Commonwealth is comprised of 40 or 60 countries, most of which are comprised of people of color. And what a wonderful thing for those members to see someone that they could relate to. So I thought it was very sad. The whole thing was very sad, and I'm disappointed.
I'm very sad for Harry. He's really lost his family. And he did not look happy at all at the interview. And although he didn't say a lot, I just really feel for him. I think Megan is a lovely, lovely person, but very strong personality. And so, which might have been the attraction for Harry, but I think I can imagine it would be very difficult for her to be in that position for the rest of her life, which might have been part of the decision to step away from the family.
Well, is Megan at the root of the Black problem or anything? I don't quite understand it. Is she, I don't understand what the problem really is. What is her culture or background or what? What is she?
Oh, Lois, well, she's mixed race. Her mother is Black and her father was white.
Okay. That's
and-
exactly what I wanted to know.
Yes,
Right.
and that was an issue in the interview, was that someone with the royal staff asked, how dark is this child going to be? And that was seen as being a racist question that should not have been asked of Harry and Meghan.
Well, I heard someone ask, are the babies going to turn out black or white? And I
Right.
thought, I didn't even know at that time that she is.
Oh.
All right, yeah, I didn't know,
That's-
but I understand now. Yeah. Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, the whole race issue has been brought into the royal family now.
Boy, it really
when never-
has.
When it never has before. That's also part of this whole issue.
Yeah.
A
I
good
don't think
example that took place. Megan and her mother wanted to go out and have a cup of coffee in the local town. The royals are not allowed to go out and mingle and have coffees and all the stuff where the general public is. And as all of you know, we always like to go out and be able to be part of what goes on in our country.
Mhm.
And you're not allowed to do that. You can only do what the institution says you can do. You just can't be part of the society. Like, you got to live in their cage. You can only get let
Boy.
out when they want you to be let out.
Boy, I'd hate to be a part of that
Mm-hmm.
family then.
Me
No,
too.
I wouldn't like
It's,
that at all.
We need to
You
wrap
can't go
up in the
church and
next,
mingle with the rest of the congregation. You got to sit in your own section. That would be terrible.
Did I hear
That is ridiculous.
removed from the Commonwealth? I think New Zealand is wanting to remove one of those.
remove itself from the
Yeah.
I think
English
I think it's
Commonwealth.
Barbados. Barbados wants to leave.
Oh, well,
Mm-hmm.
you may see more of that now too. We need to wrap up in the next couple minutes. Ron, go ahead.
I don't think Americans would support setting up a broad family with palaces and vacations and multi-million-dollar allowances that all came out of the public tax money. I think we're too independent and rebellious. We'd never support setting up a Rockefellers, a Kennedys, somebody's as a royal family for perpetuity, supported by our tax dollars.
I hope the royal family continues because one thing the way I think about it is it's a celebration of family. You know, how many of us can trace our lineage back 1,000 years? And this is a institution that can do that. So you can see, you know, with the spread of human nature, you know, there's the rotters and the heroes and all the people with the warts and everything. It's a celebration of family, of people.
And they are icons and role models of people in America as well as elsewhere. You're right, Jim.
When they start going off like this, I'm really glad that Washington prevailed over Cornwallis.
Yeah, well, I love it. Don't get me wrong. But I think it's great that somewhere in the world there is an institution like that, you know, which is a celebration of family, as I've said.
Good
Somewhere
point.
else in the world, though, not our country.
Not
Right. Very good. Do you think genealogy would be a good topic for a class one day for us? Are a lot of you?
She would.
Would you? Have you done your genealogy searches and know a lot of the history? Might be interesting for us to talk about.
That goes back about, what, 600 years?
I'm a
600
genealogy
years.
expert, and I'm a member of the Twilliger Family Association.
Very good.
4 years ago, about 100 of us celebrated our 350th anniversary in this country.
Wow.
I have 14,000 members, 14,000 Twilligers in our faith. And the Twilligers are a unique name. It was created here in the United States by British law that said that we had to have a surname. We're Dutch. Most Dutches were required to have a surname. They picked the name, they picked Van, means from somewhere. Us Twilligers wanted to keep the British very confused. We picked Ter instead of being from somewhere. We were near somewhere, and it kept them confused to this day.
Good for you.
Good for you. Good for you.
Well, there's a lot of course, biblical references to genealogy, the importance of ancestry. So we'll talk about that sometime. We've got to wrap up. What a good discussion today. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on COVID and church and the royal family even. It's fun to talk to you all. We're so blessed to have each other to share our thoughts.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. Stay warm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you next week.